This is PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino.
And welcome to PIX on Politics, everybody. I am Dan Mannarino. So let's talk about it. This summer, I'm sitting down with the candidates of the major races heading into the general election. And we're focusing on New Jersey. This week, in fact, take a look right here. A new poll from Fairleigh Dickinson University showing Democratic nominee Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill at 45% to Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican challenger, at 37%. But this is the key number that everybody's kind of focused on, that 16% that remain undecided. So Ciattarelli believes that this time around, the third time that he's ran as the Republican nominee, is in fact his best chance to bring a Republican back to the governor's office and garner some of that 16% of the undecided vote. I spoke to him earlier this week about how he's going to do that. Here's Jack Ciattarelli on the record. And Jack Ciattarelli is joining me now. So great to have you back, Mr. Ciattarelli. Good to see you.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
And we haven't spoken since primary night, so big congratulations to you on the win. And I want to begin by asking you the same question I asked your opponent, Mikey Sherrill, last week, which is how now do you plan to reach this broader audience, now that you are in the general, meaning reaching those independents and Democrats that you would need to win?
By doing what I've always done when I've won 7 races across this state, in a town, a county, and a legislative district where Democrats outnumber Republicans, sometimes significantly, going places other Republicans don't or won't, and talking about how we're going to fix New Jersey.
Let me ask you about the changing landscape. I'm a New Jersey resident, right? And you almost defeated Phil Murphy last time, but Democrats still outnumber Republicans in the state by nearly 1 million registered voters. Now, Republicans are registering more than Democrats right now, but do you see it as an uphill battle when you look at the numbers?
You know, it's funny. I'm asked most often what's different this time around. It's certainly not the issues. The issues I was talking about back in 21 have come to a complete boil now. What's different is the landscape. I'm not dealing with a pandemic. It wasn't easy running for governor during a shelter-in-place order. There's a lot less indifference. People now know Republicans can win New Jersey. Republicans have won 6 of the last 11 governor races. But here's the biggest change of all. Since I ran for governor, there's 100,000 fewer registered Democrats and 200,000 more registered Republicans. The delta between the two parties is much closer today than it was in 21.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. The significance of registered Democrats is still higher, but yeah, Republicans are registering at a faster rate. Now, last week, I spoke to your opponent, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. I did ask her about the race for New York City mayor, right? And she said she's not making an endorsement right now, saying she is focused on New Jersey. You came up pretty swiftly, saying that she flip-flopped on the issue. Now, she never actually made a formal endorsement. So do you see it as a real flip-flop?
Here's what she's not doing. She's trying to walk back what I believe was an endorsement, but she's not doing what Congressman Josh Gottheimer's doing, the Democratic congressman from North Jersey. She's not doing what the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania is doing, Josh Shapiro, condemning Mondami for hate-fueled rhetoric, whether it's towards Jews, whether it's toward law enforcement, and now the newest revelation, he doesn't want cops responding to 911 calls that are domestic violence call-ins. We should be condemning that type of candidate or politician no matter what side of the aisle they're on.
And the reason I ask about the flip-flop is because you know you're going to be hit on this too, which is, could the same be said about you? That you once called President Trump a charlatan who isn't fit to be president, then you accepted his endorsement, you endorsed him as president. Could you explain the change, I guess, from your initial remarks years ago about him today?
What Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance said about Donald Trump back in 2015, when I said that, I think, quite frankly, we're a whole lot worse. One today is the Secretary of State. One is the Vice President. The president's policies have been successful, and I'm particularly grateful for what he's done for New Jerseyans. He's stopped the wind farms off our Jersey shore with a temporary halt. I'll make that permanent. He's beating up on the New York Democrats over their congestion pricing plan, an egregious money grab that we should not be paying for their subway system. And he just quadrupled the SALT deduction on our federal tax return. My opponent voted no on that bill. Everyone across this state knows what we pay in property taxes. It's one of the reasons I'm running. But until I can fix it, we want to be able to deduct them on our federal tax return. Donald Trump just signed that bill into law.
So it was less of a flip-flop, you're saying, and more of an evolution once you saw policy?
His policies have worked, and last time around, the economy was better, the border was secure, peace in the Middle East. Those are all the things that he's doing this time around as well, and I believe with success.
And let's talk about the issues, right? And this recent Rutgers University poll, the #1 issue to New Jersey voters, and I know about this, like I said, I hear it from him every single day, as I'm sure you do, specifically about property taxes and the high cost of property taxes, which are some of the highest in the country. So how do you plan to tackle high property taxes? What can you do?
Affordability is one of the top 3 or 4 issues in this year's race. It all has to do with the taxes we pay. They're the highest in the nation, as well as now utility rates, include our monthly electric bills, because Phil Murphy and Mikey Sherrill support wind, which is never going to be able to satisfy our energy needs. We can reduce property taxes with a new school funding formula. Everyone in New Jersey knows that 50 to 70% of their annual property tax bill is for the schools. We have an inequitable distribution of state aid to our schools. I've got a new formula in mind that I think will pass muster with the state Supreme Court. We'll have a more equitable distribution, and in so doing, we'll lower property taxes.
Well, let's talk about the school districts, because your opponent has floated this idea of consolidating schools, right? School districts from some towns to save money. Do you support the idea? Because she was saying that there are too many school districts compared to towns, and some of these school districts are so small.
People love home rule here in the state of Jersey. Let me tell you what we need in school districts where school systems are failing. Choice. My opponent is opposed. What's interesting about that is the Democrats always like to portray themselves as the party of the lower middle class and the middle class, the same people that have no choice when there's a failing school district. The people that have choice are people that have means. We need to provide school choice for people who don't, like the people in Newark, who time after time support charter schools, but my opponent doesn't because she's owned by the teachers union.
So you're not for, say, consolidating a school district?
I'm all for what the locals want to do. When I was a Somerset County freeholder, we analyzed regionalizing 19 police departments. We had a very compelling study that police were part of, by the way, and at the end of the day, the locals didn't want it. As governor, I will incentivize it. When I was a legislator, we combined Princeton Borough and Princeton Township with the help of the state. If that's what the locals want to do, I'll incentivize it so much so they can't turn it down.
So can you, I guess, pledge right now that you would not raise property taxes?
I will not raise property taxes where it is that I have impact. Where I have impact is the school portion of the property tax bill, 50 to 70%. And the reason why it's so high is because of the way we distribute state aid to schools. I'll be going before the state Supreme Court on day one of my administration with a new argument on the way we fund schools and stop the overdevelopment in our suburbs with this Mount Laurel housing doctrine.
Yeah, and I think that's important what you're saying, too, because a lot of folks turn to the governor and say, well, they pledged not to raise taxes or lower taxes, whatever it may be. But a governor can't set property taxes. But what you can set, or was what you're saying, and that's the school board.
We can't set the municipal and county tax, but we have great impact, great impact. And let me say this. We can also lower business taxes and personal income taxes. We've got a bloated state budget. It went from $36 billion to almost $60 billion, 8 years' time. That's more than 70%. I will very responsibly downsize our state government, reduce its cost to afford a tax cut for businesses and individuals.
Another big issue that's playing out in real time is immigration. And you just picked your running mate for Lieutenant Governor, Morris County Sheriff James Gannon, who is big on this whole idea of law and order and the theme that's playing out around the country. And part of your announcement came a promise to repeal, quote, dangerous sanctuary states policies and restore cooperation between police and ICE. How do you see that playing out?
Nonviolent crime is through the roof in New Jersey. Break-ins, car thefts, flash mobs on our Jersey shore and at our malls. Why? Because the current administration has gone soft on crime, as has the Attorney General, who doesn't have the back of law enforcement. By the way, my opponent said that she's considering reappointing this Attorney General. That's a disqualifier. So we want to send a very loud and clear message. We're going to get tough on crime in New Jersey. And that starts by us not being a sanctuary city, nor will we be a sanctuary state. That only encourages illegal immigration and in a number of different ways handcuffs our local law enforcement professionals. If we want safe communities, let our local law enforcement professionals do their job.
So what does that look like, right? So you lift sanctuary policy, and what do local police now do with ICE?
They can work in partnership with ICE, particularly when it comes to administering warrants. But we're not going to have an attorney general under my administration that restricts our local law enforcement. I don't have a problem with no-knock warrants. Don't necessarily have a problem with canines for crowd control. I think that would go a long way towards stopping the flash mobs on our Jersey shore. Don't necessarily have a problem with high-speed chases. These are trained professionals. Let them do their job.
But specifically on the topic of immigration, right, because we're seeing some of these raids take place and folks who are not so-called the worst of the worst, not the violent offenders that are getting swept up. Is there space for folks who are looking for a path to citizenship to remain and become citizens?
I support what the president is doing in terms of deporting anybody who came here that had a history of criminality in their country of origin. I support the president deporting anybody who came here illegally and committed a crime. Those are things we have to do out of the box. Is there space? I will continue to have that conversation with the president as governor. with regard to that space. We do know there's people who've been here a number of years that have not been a threat to the community. So let's have that conversation. But job number one is to secure the border, stop the sanctuary city, stop the sanctuary state policy, and let our local law enforcement do their job. And let me also say, because you brought him up, the more people see and hear my Lieutenant Governor, Sheriff Jim Gannon, the more they're going to like.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, if you're saying somebody who may have been here for a while but isn't committing a crime, you're willing to have that conversation about them becoming a citizen?
Hey, the president had an interview on national TV that was asked the very same question. And what he said was, with regard to those people, this is challenging. And I agree with him. I hope that in the end, the president's going to strike the right balance. And I'll certainly do that on behalf of New Jersey.
And real quick, well, I'm almost out of time here. I got to ask you, because you brought it up earlier about congestion pricing. How would you get rid of it if you don't like it?
By retaliating. Any New York plate that comes through the tunnels or over the bridge in the morning into New Jersey, I'll hit them with a congestion pricing fee and put it toward New Jersey Transit. I think that sends a loud and clear message. We're not going to be pushed around here in New Jersey.
All right, a reverse congestion pricing fee. Just one of many conversations we'll have from now until November. Mr. Ciattarelli, great to have you back.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, there you go. And up next, everybody, we're bringing back the PIX panel. Lots to discuss from this week after a shooting rocked Midtown Manhattan, policing coming to the forefront of the race for New York City mayor. We'll talk to the panel about that when PIX on Politics is back in just 2 minutes. And time now for the PIX panel. Joining me this week, PIX 11 political reporter Henry Rossoff, City Hall reporter for the Daily News, Josie Stratman, in her first appearance. Welcome, Josie. And reporter for Politico, Jeff Colton. Great to have you back, Jeff.
Thank you.
I want to begin with what played out this week, this shooting in Midtown, the city on edge, obviously, over what played out here. And you can tell that the NYPD, including the police commissioner and the mayor, very upset over the loss of life and the loss of a police officer. And it's really now put this in the forefront of the mayor's race and the city. So how is the mayor going about addressing this in terms of leadership?
In terms of leadership, what he's tried to do is remain focused on the response, be very out front. I believe he spoke with you on the morning show, yep. Dan, spoke with others, trying to convey this sense of calm and steady leadership. He hasn't really touched the politics directly in the race for mayor. Mm-hmm. He has gone after gun control politics, as you are seeing a lot of New York's leaders doing, saying it's time to do something. We can't allow someone to drive from Nevada where they have mental health issues, get a weapon like this, drive into a building in Midtown Manhattan and do something like this. There was a veiled statement made at the vigil following the shooting where he said those who have been disparaging to police really need to rethink it. But that is as close as he's gotten to really hinting at Mr. Mamdani's past statements that have been less than supportive of police.
Zoran Mamdani, who was in Uganda at the time of this, arrived back on Wednesday and immediately went to go visit the officer's family and then had a press conference about it where he was questioned by all of you regarding some past comments. So, Jeff, let me come to you first because you were there. It was a very crowded space, right?
Yes, it was.
And he has to now look at some of his past comments and address these, and he kind of shifted some of his positions. Talk about it.
Yeah, so he already had walked away from his defund the police comments.
Yeah.
He had already said, this is not what I want to do as mayor. He said in 2020, yes, I was basically caught up in the moment after the killings of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter summer, and he was saying defund the police, just like a lot of Democrats were saying it. That's his explanation now, that now as mayor, he's not running on that platform. He said that clearly those statements are out of step with what I'm actually proposing. And Mamdani also, I think, struck the right tone. I mean, he was also very solemn. He was, talking about his past policy positions or his past, calls to defund the police. But at the same time, he was really showing support for the officer, including, he's running to be the first Muslim mayor. And what the officer who was killed is a Bangladeshi Muslim immigrant. So there's a real connection there that, no other mayoral candidate is able to provide.
He also, for the first time, walked away pretty directly from one of these past statements. There was a comment made in November of 2020 where he commented on a poster on Twitter, now X, who said, I saw a police officer in their car crying, and Mamdani said, nature is healing, which a lot of police officers in this moment have found very offensive. Yeah. And he said point blank, that's not in line with how I feel now.
I will complicate that one a little bit.
Yeah.
He posted that on the day that Donald Trump lost the election. So the way I read it is like, yes, it's disrespectful of police in a way, but he was probably more just like trying to, crap on Donald Trump. That said, that tweet has, yes, I mean, it's blown up, and he didn't defend it that way. He's just like, sorry, I shouldn't have said it. So.
Yeah, I mean, and he's also walked back a little bit about dismantling the strategic response group, the SRG, that went into the building to say, well, it will look like this under my administration. But while that was all going on, Andrew Cuomo was actually out on the campaign trail. And I know, Josie, you were out there and had a good back and forth with him. Did this come up about the shooting and some of Mamdani's past positions? Is he already talking about it on the trail?
Yes, he talked about it right in the immediate aftermath of this shooting and has continued to basically double down on these criticisms of Mamdani. I asked him yesterday at this stop in Inwood if he had any second thoughts about this line of approach, especially given that Mamdani actually appeared alongside some of the victims' families at this press conference. And he said no, he doesn't have any regrets about this, and that these are Mamdani's words, not Cuomo's. So it's from Cuomo's telling, Mamdani taking himself down.
Yeah, and you really pressed, I was at the same gaggle you were, and you really pressed him on this, and he said, hey, if he doesn't like getting criticized for this, he should more firmly walk away from these words.
Yes.
So you even gave Cuomo a chance to maybe pull back a little bit in this moment of grieving for the city, and he went full forward on this.
Yeah.
Isn't there something to be said about a politician like Mamdani looking back at some of his past comments, Jeff, and saying, I'm going to alter them a bit? I mean, it's not unheard of that a politician walks back some previous statements given current events. Is that what he's doing?
That is what he's doing, yeah. And look, I've seen a little bit of criticism from the left. Some people, frankly, would prefer that he continues to defund the police. The issue always is that that term has become toxic, and you cannot...
The defund.
Defund the police has become toxic. And even somebody like Mamdani, who is, basically pushing to move some police responsibilities to other agencies, more social workers. I mean, that was always kind of the heart of this defund the police call, at least among many Democrats. And so he's still kind of wanting to effectuate that. He's just has to turn away from the actual phrase, which again has become toxic. So I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how he's able to spin this of like, yes, I do want to change the NYPD, but at the same time he's showing respect, trying to show respect for police officers. Yeah, he's walking a fine line, and I mean, obviously, at least Democratic voters were totally fine with it in the primary.
I think we're also looking at like since he's the Democratic nominee, he is most likely at this point going to be the next mayor. So how would he work with the city's police force, the unions, the police commissioner, and what would that relationship look like? We've had mayors in the past, like de Blasio, who've been very contentious with the police force.
Yeah, I mean, Mamdani's even said that he would consider keeping Police Commissioner Tisch on, who many people like.
And the baseline case that he likes to make is, I want police officers to do less. I don't want them to have to essentially be the social safety net. He used a sort of an odd phrasing in policing, which is hug a cactus. I want the prickly matters handled by social workers so that cops can actually go be cops and solve crime. At least that's the case that he's making.
Yeah, and I want to get over to what's happening in New Jersey and the Mamdani effect around the country, but I do want to just briefly, you were out with Cuomo yesterday. Has he been campaigning differently this time around? It feels different.
He is absolutely more available to the public and the press than he was in the primary race. He's been out, I think, nearly every day since he announced his re-entrance into the race to still somewhat controlled appearances, selective appearances. He's going to neighborhoods where he's already received a good amount of support, or in neighborhoods where he hasn't, like the West Village. He went to an Italian specialty shop. I'm guessing they were very supportive of Cuomo. So it's still a bit controlled, but he's also taking questions from the press far more frequently than he was.
I covered him for, he was in the primary for what, 3-4 months? Yeah. We didn't talk on the phone once. In this past week, I talked to him on the phone twice. Yeah. So it's a very different press approach.
And same with Adams, who's now suddenly doing videos on social media, much like Mamdani.
Absolutely.
Over in New Jersey, Fairleigh Dickinson, a poll came out, has Mikey Sherrill ahead by 8 points against Jack Ciattarelli. By the way, we're doing the lieutenant governor debate here on PIX 11. But when you look at that, there's 16% undecided. What does Ciattarelli have to do?
I mean, he really needs to reach those people. The Fairleigh Dickinson poll that you're referencing actually did a really interesting experiment in the way that they phrased the questions. Basically, they set it up with, if we ask you about some national questions first, really leaning into President Trump's policies, then Ciattarelli loses support among undecided independent voters. If we focus on NJ transit and flooding and other local issues, then he gains support in independent undecided voters. So really, that's his blueprint. Focus, focus, focus on those independent issues. And although he's endorsed by President Trump, has to respectfully distance himself. Easier said than done.
Yeah, well, in that interview we just aired, it doesn't sound like he is distancing himself very much. And he addresses this flip-flop over Mikey Sherrill and Mamdani, which kind of goes to this whole Mamdani effect of what that's going to be with Democrats. But we're out of time, so we'll talk about that next time. Josie, Henry, and Jeff, great to have all of you here. Pick Some Politics back in just a few minutes, everybody. But let me talk about this for a second. New Jersey lawmakers discussing a potential end to micro-betting in the state. If passed, it could be a massive change to a very lucrative business. We'll talk about it. And welcome back, everybody. So a bill in Trenton looks to bring some change to the sports gambling business over in New Jersey by banning what's called micro-betting. So that's also known as in-game live betting, right? Micro-bets involve betting on the next immediate action in a game, and it could be a bet on whether or not the next play will involve a score, or if the next pitch in a baseball game is a ball or a strike. So the bill's author, Democratic Assemblyman Dan Hutchinson, is a bankruptcy attorney.
I will help people who have problems with their debts. And a lot of times people are choosing to place bets over making their mortgage payments.
The council has seen a nearly 300% increase in calls to our helpline since sports betting was legalized in 2018.
If passed into law, the bill would seek to establish penalties for sports wagering licensees who offer micro bets. No word yet, though, on what those penalties could look like. New Jersey, by the way, remains one of the top states in the nation in online sports betting. And with that, we'll be right back. All right, everybody, taking a look at the week ahead. I will be sitting down with Democratic nominee for New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Now, we did have to postpone this week. He attended officer's funeral, but there is a lot to talk to Mamdani about. Send me your questions on social media, okay? I want to take your questions, bring them right to him as he is the Democratic frontrunner right now. We're talking to each of the candidates because it is a crowded field, which is not typical heading into a general election. So we're talking to everybody right here on Pick Some Politics, giving everybody equal time. And with that, I'm Dan Mannarino. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you next week.